At a warehouse on the East Docks, the Black Tigers gathered, unaware that death was already on their doorstep. Inside, Ha-Joon walked among his men like a shadow. His suit was immaculate. His eyes, merciless. "Park Ryan," he said evenly. "You touched what's mine." The rival boss sneered. "You think one little café girl gives you a right to?" A single gunshot split the air. Silence followed. Ha-Joon lowered his weapon, smoke curling from the barrel. "Anyone else want to test the theory?" No one did. He turned to Min-soo. "Make sure word spreads. The Biko protect their own. Anyone touches her again, they disappear." Min-soo nodded grimly. Ha-Joon left without another word, the echo of his footsteps the only sound. That same night, Maya sat alone in the safe house, staring at the dark city through rain-smeared glass. The storm outside mirrored the one inside her. She wanted to hate him, for the chaos, for the fear, for pulling her into his dangerous orbit. But the image that kept replaying in her mind wasn't his violence. It was the way he'd looked at her in the café, protective, almost broken. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello." A deep voice replied. "Miss Johnson." "Yes. This is Detective Han. We're investigating an incident downtown. You might want to know, there was a shootout near the docks tonight. Several members of the Black Tiger crew were found dead." Her hand tightened around the phone. "Dead?" "Yes. Rumor is the Biko syndicate was involved." Her heart sank. "Ha-Joon," she whispered. "Do you know anyone associated with that name?" the detective asked sharply. Maya swallowed. "No, I don't." She hung up before he could press further. For a long moment, she stood frozen. Then, trembling, she whispered to the empty room. "What are you doing, Ha-Joon?" He returned just before dawn, coat soaked through, eyes hollow from lack of sleep. Maya was waiting. When he walked in, she crossed the room and slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked through the silence. Ha-Joon didn't flinch. He just stood there, jaw tightening, as if he'd been expecting it. "You killed them," she said. Her voice shook. "Didn't you?" "They destroyed your life," he replied quietly. "I returned the favor. That's not justice." "No," he agreed. "It's balance." Her eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. "You think this makes me feel safe?" "Doesn't. It makes me sick." He stepped closer, voice rough. "Then tell me what would make you feel safe, Maya. Tell me what I have to do." She looked up at him, chest heaving. "Stop fighting the world like it owes you something. And if the world comes for you, then I'll face it. On my own." Their eyes locked. Fury, grief, longing. She pushed him back with both hands, but he caught her wrists, not roughly, just enough to still her. "Let me protect you," he said. "I didn't ask for it." "Doesn't matter," he whispered. "You have it." For a moment, neither moved. The rain hammered the windows, thunder rolling in the distance. His breath was warm against her skin. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. It wasn't safety she felt. It was something deeper, something more dangerous. Slowly, he released her wrists. "You're right," he said softly. "Maybe I don't deserve to save anyone." He turned toward the door. "Ha-Joon," she said quietly. He stopped, his back still to her. "Don't die for me," she whispered. He looked over his shoulder, eyes shadowed but soft. "Then live for me." And with that, he was gone into the rain again. 3 days passed without word. Maya didn't sleep. She kept replaying that last look, the exhaustion in his face, the weight of violence pressing down on him. Then, one morning, Min-soo arrived at the safe house. His usual calm was gone. "Boss was ambushed last night," he said quietly. "Black Tiger's remaining lieutenants. They set a trap." Maya's knees weakened. "Where is he?" "In the hospital. Under police watch. He won't talk. But..." Min-soo hesitated. "He asked for you." Her heart twisted. "Me?" "He said you'd understand." The hospital smelled of antiseptic and rain. She slipped past the guards, disguised in a hooded jacket. The corridors buzzed with quiet tension. When she entered his room, the sight made her chest ache. Ha-Joon lay against the pillow, arm bandaged, and 4 in his wrist. Even half-conscious, he radiated power. But now it was dimmed, replaced by something vulnerable. When his eyes fluttered open and met hers, he smiled faintly. "You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be shot," she countered. He chuckled weakly. "Fair point." She sat beside the bed. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the machines filled the silence. "You know," he said softly, "you could still walk away from all this." Maya looked at him, eyes glistening. "And leave you to keep destroying yourself? I've made peace with what I am. Then maybe it's time you make peace with who you could be." He blinked, taken aback. She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "You protect people. Maybe not the right way, but it means something. It means there's still good left in you." For a long moment, Ha-Joon said nothing. Then, quietly, he murmured, "You talk like you can see things that aren't there. Maybe I just see the things you're afraid to." Their hands met, hers small and warm against his cold, bruised fingers. He squeezed lightly. "If I live through this, Maya, I'll build your cafe again. Brick by brick. You have my word." Her voice trembled. "I don't want promises. I just want you to come back." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "You're starting to sound like you care." She looked away, hiding the tears that finally fell. "Maybe I do." Outside, dawn broke over Seoul, soft and gold against the rain. The storm had passed, for now. But both of them knew the calm wouldn't last. Still, as Ha-Joon drifted back to sleep, Maya stayed beside him, her hand in his, whispering to herself, "If love can grow from this, maybe nothing is impossible." The wind that morning carried the scent of rebuilding, of wet cement, new paint, and stubborn hope. 3 weeks had passed since the hospital incident. Ha-Joon's wound had nearly healed, but the shadow in his eyes had not. His body was recovering, his world was not. And yet, there he was, in a plain black hoodie, sleeves rolled up, helping Maya sweep the floor of what used to be her cafe. Maya watched him from behind the counter, a strange ache tightening her chest. There was something almost poetic about seeing a mafia boss with a broom in his hand. "You're doing that wrong," she said teasingly. He looked up, one eyebrow arched. "You mean sweeping? You're supposed to go with the grain of the wood. You're just pushing dust around." He smirked. "I break people for a living, not floors." "Yeah, I can tell," she said, laughing softly. The sound made him pause. It was the first time he'd heard her laugh since everything had fallen apart. Something warm flickered in his chest, something he wasn't used to feeling. By the end of the day, the small shop was slowly coming back to life. The new espresso machine gleamed. The air smelled faintly of fresh varnish and coffee beans. Maya stood in the doorway admiring their work. "It's starting to look like home again." Ha-Joon glanced at her. "It is home." She turned to him. "For me, maybe. You? You belong to a world that never sleeps or forgives." He leaned against the counter, arms folded. "You think I can't belong to more than one world?" "I think you're trying," she said softly. "And that scares me." He looked away, jaw tightening. "Trying doesn't change what I am." "Then what are you, Ha-Joon?" He met her eyes, dark, steady. "A man who wants to be more than his name." Maya felt her heart stutter. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that the man who rebuilt her cafe wasn't the same one who had blood on his hands. But trust, like love, required risk, and Maya had already risked too much. That night, the underworld stirred again. Inside a dim bar on the outskirts of Seoul, 2 men sat across from each other, voices low. One of them, Chol-woo, a lieutenant under Ha-Joon, nursed his drink and muttered, "He's losing it. Getting soft over some woman." The other, Seo-jin, smirked. "You mean the foreigner? The cafe girl?" "Yeah. He's blinded by her. He killed the tigers and now the police are circling. He's making enemies, inside and out." Seo-jin leaned forward. "Then maybe it's time someone else took the throne." Chol-woo hesitated. "You're talking treason." "I'm talking survival." Ha-Joon replied coldly. Ha-Joon's weakness will destroy us. But if we move fast, the Biko can have a new leader, one who doesn't lose his head over a woman. Their glasses clinked together. The first seeds of betrayal had been planted. Maya didn't know it yet, but the world around her was tightening like a noose. For now, she was lost in a quieter world, one of steaming milk and music humming softly from the radio. Ha-Joon sat at one of the tables, a laptop open, his attention fixed on something she couldn't see. She poured him a cappuccino and set it in front of him. You know, for a guy who used to terrify half the city, you look awfully domestic right now. He smiled slightly. You make it sound like an insult. It's not, she said. It's nice. He closed the laptop, looking at her with that same intensity that always made her pulse skip. You ever think about leaving this place? Soul? He nodded. Sometimes, she admitted. But running away never solved anything. Sometimes it's the only way to survive. She met his gaze. And if I left, would you come with me? He hesitated just long enough for her to notice. Then, you know I can't. She smiled faintly. I know. That evening, Min-soo arrived unexpectedly. He looked tense, the kind of tension that meant bad news. Boss, he said, glancing at Maya before continuing. There's been talk. Chul-woo's been meeting with Ha-Joon. Ha-Joon's expression darkened. What kind of talk? Enough to make me nervous. They think you've gone soft. They're questioning your decisions, the cleanup, the café, everything. Ha-Joon leaned back slowly, eyes cold. So they've forgotten who made them rich. They're not afraid anymore, Min-soo said quietly. And men who stop fearing start planning. Ha-Joon's jaw clenched. Keep an eye on them. But no blood yet. Not until I'm sure. Maya watched silently, heart pounding. She knew this tone, the one that meant someone would bleed before the week was out. When Min-soo left, she walked over. You can't keep doing this, she said. You can't fight the whole city just to prove you're not weak. This isn't about pride, he replied. It's about survival. She shook her head. Then let me help you survive differently. He looked at her, searching her face. You think love makes me weaker? No, she whispered. I think it's the only thing making you human. For a long moment he didn't move. Then, almost reluctantly, he brushed a thumb along her jaw. Not possessive, but gentle. You don't know how dangerous it is to love me, Maya. Maybe danger's the only thing we have in common. 2 nights later, Ha-Joon got a message from Chul-woo. A meeting request. Urgent. Min-soo didn't like it. It smells wrong. Ha-Joon loaded his gun anyway. If I hide now, I lose the syndicate. And if I lose the syndicate, they'll come for her next. Maya watched him from the doorway. Her voice trembled. You're walking into a trap. He looked at her with something raw in his eyes. Part regret, part need. Then I'll spring it before they do. Ha-Joon. He stepped closer, brushed a strand of hair from her face. If I don't come back, don't say that. You run. Promise me. She shook her head fiercely. I'm done running. He smiled faintly. Then stay alive. For both of us. And with that, he was gone again, swallowed by the night. The warehouse smelled of oil and deceit. Ha-Joon entered, every sense alert. Chul-woo and Ha-Joon stood waiting, surrounded by a dozen men. Boss, Chul-woo said, voice smooth. We thought we'd discuss the future. Ha-Joon's gaze flicked over them. Looks like you already decided what it is. Ha-Joon smirked. You changed, Ha-Joon. You let a woman and a dream cloud your judgment. You forgot what power means. Ha-Joon's voice was quiet, deadly. Power means loyalty, something you don't understand. Loyalty doesn't pay when the king forgets his crown. And with that, the first gun fired. Chaos erupted, bullets, shouting, metal clanging against concrete. Ha-Joon ducked behind a pillar, returning fire with calm precision. Min-soo's men burst through the side entrance, guns blazing. When the smoke cleared, Ha-Joon was on the ground, bleeding but alive. Chul-woo was gone. Ha-Joon staggered slightly, clutching his shoulder. Another wound, deeper this time. Min-soo caught him before he fell. "Boss, find Chul-woo," Ha-Joon rasped. "Before he finds her." Back at the cafe, Maya was closing up when the lights flickered. The door creaked open. She froze. A shadow stepped inside Chul-woo. "You're the reason he's weak," he sneered. "The reason men are dead." Maya's pulse spiked. She took a step back. "You don't have to do this." "Maybe not. But I want to see how much you matter to him." He drew his gun, just as a voice thundered from the doorway. "Don't, Ha-Joon." He was pale, bleeding, but his gun was steady. Chul-woo smirked. "You should have stayed down, boss." Ha-Joon didn't answer. His finger tightened on the trigger, just as Chul-woo fired. The shot missed Maya by inches. She screamed. Ha-Joon's bullet hit its mark. Chul-woo collapsed, gun clattering to the floor. For a long moment, silence reigned. Only the sound of Maya's ragged breathing filled the air. Then she ran to him, catching him as his knees buckled. "Ha-Joon, stay with me," she cried. He smiled weakly, eyes half-lidded. "Told you, I'd protect you. Don't you dare die now." He brushed a trembling hand against her cheek. "You said you didn't want promises. But I keep mine." And then he went still. Maya's sob echoed through the empty cafe, through the same walls that had once held laughter and warmth. Outside, the rain began to fall again. The world ended in silence. No gunfire, no shouting, just the slow, unbearable quiet that came after a heartbeat stopped. Maya sat on the floor of her cafe, Ha-Joon's blood still warm on her hands. His head lay in her lap, his lips pale but peaceful, as though he'd simply fallen asleep. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, but she couldn't hear them. Her own sobs drowned everything else out. "Don't leave me," she whispered over and over, rocking him gently. "Please, Ha-Joon, please." When the police arrived, she didn't resist. They tried to pull her away, but her fingers clung to his jacket as if letting go would erase him. It took 2 officers to separate them. She watched through blurred vision as they covered his body with a white sheet. And just like that, the man who had saved her, the man she had begun to love, was gone. The Biko Syndicate held a quiet ceremony 3 days later. No public display, no lavish mourning. Just a small room filled with dangerous men who didn't know what to do with grief. Maya stood apart from them all, dressed in black, her eyes empty. She didn't cry this time. She'd spent all her tears. Min-soo approached her after the ceremony. His face was drawn, his voice rough. "He would have wanted you safe." She looked at him sharply. "Then why wasn't he safe?" He lowered his gaze. "He made his choices. He'd never let anyone else pay for them." Something in his tone caught her attention. An odd stiffness, a crack beneath the grief. But she was too numb to think about it. She simply nodded and walked away. That night, she locked herself inside the cafe, the place where he'd fallen, the place they'd rebuilt together. And she whispered into the darkness, "You promised me you'd come back." Days turned into weeks. Seoul moved on, but Maya couldn't. Every sound of rain on the windows felt like him. Every cup of coffee she poured was a ghost. Jeannie tried to help, but nothing reached her. "Maya, you have to stop torturing yourself," she pleaded one evening. Maya stared into her untouched drink. "You don't get it. He changed everything. And now there's just nothing." Jeannie sighed, squeezing her friend's hand. "Then change it again. For him." Those words stuck in Maya's mind long after Jeannie left. That night, she reopened the cafe to the public, quietly, with no announcement. Only a small candle sat on the counter beside the register, its flame flickering beside a single photograph of Ha-Joon, her tribute, her rebellion against forgetting. Across town, in an abandoned hammock on the edge of Seoul, Ha-Joon opened his eyes to a blinding light. He was alive, barely. Min-soo sat beside him, arms crossed. "Welcome back, boss." Ha-Joon blinked slowly. "Where?" "Safe house. You lost a lot of blood. We spread word that you died." Ha-Joon struggled to sit up. "Maya, she thinks you're gone," Min-soo said quietly. "It was the only way." Ha-Joon's voice broke. You should have told her. If I had, she'd have been in more danger than ever. Ha-Joon's men are still out there. The police too. You needed to disappear, for both your sakes. Ha-Joon closed his eyes, guilt pressing on his chest. She's alone because of me. Min-soo hesitated. She's stronger than you think. Ha-Joon turned his head toward the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. Maya, he thought. Stay alive. Just a little longer. 2 months passed. Maya had learned to smile again, or at least to pretend. Business at the café grew slowly. Customers returned. The smell of roasted beans once again filled the air. But every time the door opened, she looked up, expecting to see him. And every time it wasn't him. One night, while cleaning the back room, she found a small metal box beneath the counter. One she'd never seen before. Inside was a folded note, written in Ha-Joon's familiar handwriting. If you ever doubt yourself, remember this. You survived me. You were brave before I found you. You'll be braver after I'm gone. HJ. Her breath caught. The ink was smeared slightly, but fresh enough that it couldn't have been written before his death. Her heart pounded. No, she whispered, shaking her head. It can't be. But it was his handwriting. His words. His voice. And in that instant, the flicker of hope she'd buried so deep began to glow again. Meanwhile, the Biko syndicate was splitting apart. Ha-Joon, still wounded but alive, had begun gathering Ha-Joon's remaining enemies. Word spread that he intended to claim the organization once and for all. Min-soo kept Ha-Joon hidden, but even he knew the illusion wouldn't last. They'll find out soon, he warned. If they learn you're alive before we're ready. They won't, Ha-Joon said grimly. Not until I'm the one who shows them. He limped to the window, shoulders still stiff from the wound. What about Maya? She's back at the café, keeping to herself. Ha-Joon nodded. Good. She needs to think I'm gone, until it's safe. Min-soo hesitated. And what if it never is? Ha-Joon's jaw set. Then I'll make it safe. One evening, Maya was closing the café when the bell above the door jingled. A man stepped in, tall, clean-cut, wearing a dark gray suit. There was something unsettlingly familiar about him. Miss Johnson? He asked politely. Yes, she said warily. He handed her a small envelope. From someone who wanted you to have this. Before she could ask who, he was gone. She opened the envelope. Inside was a black chess piece, a knight, and a single line written on the back of a napkin. The game isn't over. Her heart nearly stopped. That was what Ha-Joon had said to her once, jokingly, after teaching her to play chess at the café months ago. She turned the note over, no signature, no clue. But the handwriting was the same as the note in the box. She pressed the napkin to her chest. Ha-Joon, she whispered. You're alive. From that night, everything changed. Maya began noticing things. A black car parked across the street. A familiar scent of cologne on a passing breeze. The faint sense that she was being watched. Instead of fear, what she felt was purpose. She wasn't going to sit back and wait for answers. If Ha-Joon was alive, she would find him. But she wasn't the only one searching. Ha-Joon's men had learned that Maya still kept the café running. And if Ha-Joon cared for her once, they knew she could be bait. 3 nights later, Maya was walking home through a narrow alley when headlights flared behind her. She froze. A van screeched to a halt. 2 men stepped out, strangers, but their intent was clear. Miss Johnson, one said, smirking. Our boss wants a word. Maya's heart raced. She turned to run, but a 3rd man blocked her path. Before they could grab her, a gunshot cracked the air. 1 man dropped instantly. The others scattered, firing wildly into the darkness. Then a voice she'd thought she'd never hear again cut through the chaos. Get down! Maya ducked instinctively. The fight was over in seconds, brutal, efficient. When the last man fell, she looked up. And there he was. Ha-Joon stood at the end of the alley, coat whipping in the wind, eyes locked on hers. Alive, real, breathing. For a moment, neither moved. Then Maya ran, straight into his arms. He caught her, holding her tightly, his breath ragged. You shouldn't have been here, he whispered. You shouldn't have died, she shot back, fists pounding weakly against his chest. You let me believe. I had to, he said, gripping her shoulders. It was the only way to keep you safe. She looked up at him, tears spilling over. You think safety means anything without you? He froze, and then, slowly, a faint, broken smile curved his lips. You haven't changed. Neither have you, she said, voice trembling. Still making terrible decisions. He laughed softly, the sound she thought she'd never hear again. And then, for a heartbeat, they just stood there. Two souls battered by loss and lies, finally finding each other again. But before peace could settle, a single-car engine roared nearby. Ha-Joon's eyes snapped up, sharp and cold again. They found us. He turned to Maya, his voice low but steady. Whatever happens next, don't run this time. She nodded, fear and love warring in her chest. And together, they disappeared into the dark, ready to face whatever war waited on the other side. The night bled into gray. Rain slicked the streets as Maya and Ha-Joon sped through the narrow back roads of Mapo district in a stolen sedan, tires splashing through puddles. The city lights blurred behind them. Seoul was still awake, but for them, the world had narrowed to the pulse of the engine and the pounding of their hearts. Ha-Joon's knuckles were white on the wheel. His jaw was tight, eyes darting between mirrors. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they regroup. Maya sat beside him, breathing hard. Her hands trembled, though she tried to hide it. Who were those men? Ha-Joon's, he said flatly. They've been watching you for weeks. I should have known they'd move when word spread I was still alive. Maya stared at him, the reality finally sinking in. You mean they knew you were alive before I did? Ha-Joon didn't answer, and that silence said enough. She turned away, looking out the window at the streaming lights. You lied to me again, he sighed. I did what I had to. There are things moving underground, Maya. The Biko syndicate isn't what it was. Half the men who swore loyalty now sell information to the highest bidder. If you'd known I was alive, you'd have been their first target. Her voice broke, quiet but sharp. I already was. Ha-Joon glanced at her, guilt flickering behind his composure. I know. They abandoned the car near the Han River and slipped into a half-collapsed warehouse at the edge of the docks. The air smelled of rust and salt. Min-soo was waiting, flashlight in hand. Relief flashed across his face when he saw them. Boss, you made it. Ha-Joon nodded curtly. Status. Ha-Joon's men are sweeping Itaewon and Gangnam. They think you're heading south. Good, Ha-Joon said. Let them think that. Maya followed quietly, her shoes crunching on broken glass. She still couldn't decide if she wanted to hug Ha-Joon or punch him. Min-soo gave her a small, respectful nod. It's good to see you again, Miss Maya. You've got more courage than half the men in this business. She managed a faint smile. That's not saying much. Ha-Joon allowed himself a ghost of a grin before turning serious again. We need to disappear. Tonight. Min-soo frowned. Where to? Busan. The docks there are still under my control, for now. And Maya? Min-soo asked quietly. Ha-Joon hesitated, then looked at her. She stays with me. Maya crossed her arms. Was that supposed to be a question? No, he said simply. A promise. They traveled by night, switching cars twice, avoiding main highways. Maya dozed in fits, waking every time Ha-Joon's hand tensed on the wheel. Why didn't you run? He asked suddenly, eyes fixed ahead. When? Back there. The alley. You could have run. She glanced at him. Because you told me not to. His lips twitched. You really listened to me? I didn't say I'd do it again, she said softly. He laughed quietly, the sound cutting through the tension like sunlight. After a long silence, she said, Ha-Joon, what happens after this? He didn't answer immediately. The car hummed through the darkness. After this, there's no going back. Not to your café. Not to Seoul. Maybe not even to your name. Maya swallowed hard. And you? I stopped having an after a long time ago. She turned to him, voice trembling. Then why save me? He looked at her finally, eyes full of something deep and dangerous. Because you made me remember I was human. For a moment the world fell away. Just the rain, the hum of the tires, and the quiet ache between them. By dawn, they reached the outskirts of Busan, a coastal city veiled in mist. Min-soo led them through a maze of narrow streets to a safe house overlooking the water. But something was wrong. The door was ajar. Ha-Joon motioned for silence. He drew his gun, moving like a shadow. Maya stayed behind, her pulse thundering. He nudged the door open. The place was empty, but still warm. Someone had been there minutes ago. A cell phone sat on the table, vibrating once before stopping. Ha-Joon picked it up. The screen flashed a single message. You can't hide from ghosts. Then the phone exploded in a burst of static, smoke filling the air. Ha-Joon cursed, tossing it aside. They knew we were coming. How? Min-soo demanded. Someone's leaking information, Ha-Joon said. Someone inside my own circle. Maya's throat tightened. Then we're not safe anywhere. Ha-Joon looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the flicker of fear behind his composure. No, he said quietly. We're not. They hid in a fishing boat that night, anchored just offshore. The sea was rough, wind cutting through the air like knives. Maya stood at the railing, staring at the black waves. How long can you live like this? She asked. As long as I have to, he said, stepping beside her. She turned to him. You think you can outrun everything, the police, the syndicate, the ghosts. But you can't, Ha-Joon. Nobody can. He leaned against the rail, watching her. You're not wrong. But if I stop, they'll come for you. Then let them, she said fiercely. I'm not afraid anymore. Something broke in his expression. The cold, hardened mask cracking just enough for her to see the man underneath. You should be, he whispered. Because I am. She blinked. Of what? Of losing you. The words hung between them, raw and real. Maya's breath caught. The wind whipped her hair across her face, and for a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then she stepped closer, until they were inches apart. You already did once, she said softly. Don't make it twice. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time there was no war in his eyes, just surrender. Slowly, he reached out, brushing his thumb along her cheek. I won't. And then the moment shattered. A gunshot echoed across the waves. Ha-Joon spun, pulling her down behind the railing. Bullets tore through the side of the boat, splintering wood. Get below, he barked. She scrambled to obey as Min-soo fired back from the deck. The attackers were on jet skis, dark figures against the storm. Ha-Joon took cover beside the cabin, returning fire with icy precision. One by one, the attackers fell, but more kept coming. Maya crouched behind a crate, hands pressed to her ears. The world was thunder and chaos. When the last shot faded, the silence was worse than the noise. Ha-Joon, she whispered. He appeared through the smoke, blood streaking his sleeve but alive. I'm fine, he said hoarsely. Min-soo wasn't. He lay slumped against the railing, a crimson stain spreading across his chest. Ha-Joon dropped to his knees beside him. Stay with me. Min-soo coughed, a ghost of a smile on his lips. Always knew you'd screw up the peace. Ha-Joon's voice broke. Don't do this, Min-soo. But his friend was already gone. Maya knelt beside him, silent tears cutting down her face. Ha-Joon sat there for a long time, the storm raging around them, holding his fallen brother. Then, quietly, he said, No more running. Thank you for watching. Episode 2 ends here. Find out more about the story in episode 3 coming up soon. If you enjoyed the story, leave us a comment. Also like, share and subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new story is made.